Ah, welcome to Cornbread and Roses, episode 2. I'm one of your hosts, Austin, along with Jason and Mars, and we got a couple guests tonight. Uh, Allison from Alltrek and Robert, uh, who organizes a lot in Alabama over the last few years. Allison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Allison. She, her, woman, lesbian, transgender. Um, Last year, some friends and I started up the Alabama Trans Rights Action Coalition, and we've been working at uh, stopping anti-queer legislation from moving through the Alabama state legislature. So, glad to be here.
We're very glad to have you. Thank you for being here and thank you for your work. Robert, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm Robert Lewis Hunter. I'm a member of North Alabama DSA. I'm the Vice Chair of Minority Affairs for my local Etowah County Party, Youth Caucus member for the state party, and a steering committee member for the Appalachian Youth organization called Stay Together Appalachian Youth, or Stay Project.
Outstanding. And we thank you for your work and your dedication. Both of you all have dedicated a lot of time and years into making the world a better place. And we need more folks like y'all out there. So thank you. And I think we're going to kind of just hop on into it. I know there's definitely been some memes floating around regarding healthcare out there, and so yeah, shout out to CEOs. Good luck in the coming new year, and we're gonna hop right into it with basically how a bill becomes law. Before we say, also we got Jason. Jason, you want to say hi real quick, and then Mars.
Hello, comrades.
All right.
Hello.
Succinct, love it. So yeah, we're gonna talk about how a bill becomes law, and we're gonna talk about HB 67, which was just filed about 4 days ago, and which is some anti-queer, anti-trans legislation, and we're going to try to get into some leadership and personalities that are out there. So with a lot of help from the ACLU this week, reading and watching some of the things that they provided, I'm going to bring this up for everybody to see. Where are we at? Well, there we go. There we go.
And just to be clear, this is how a bill becomes law in Alabama. We're talking about the Alabama state legislature.
Exactly. Which, every state has some intricacies.
Do we want to back up a minute and mention briefly the composition of the Alabama legislature?
Sure. Actually, I got some of that. If you'd like to start talking on that, I'll bring up the.
Sure. So we decided to start with the legislature because Alabama has an unusually powerful legislature compared to most other states. The Speaker of our state house has a lot of power, and notably, it only takes a simple majority to overturn a veto. So if the governor were to veto a law that gets passed, the Senate and the House can override that with a simple majority instead of a 2/3 majority that you need at the state level or at the federal level. So that gives the state legislature quite a bit of power. And because of the lack of home rule in Alabama, which is something we'll talk about in future episodes, a lot of decisions have to go through Montgomery, and through the legislature in particular. And so we thought we'd start by talking about the Alabama legislature, how bills become law, who's there, and what the structure is like. So just for the very basic information to start with at first, Alabama has a bicameral legislature, just like the federal government has. We have both a House and a Senate. But unlike the federal legislature, both of our senators and House members serve for 4 years. So at the federal level, House members serve for 2 years and senators serve for 6 years. But in Alabama, they both serve for terms of 4 years, and they're elected every off presidential year. So in 2026, all of the state legislatures, legislative members will be up for re-election again. And let's check the numbers. So the House has 105 members, of which 76 are Republicans and only 29 Democrats. The Republicans have had a supermajority in both houses since 2010 or so. The Senate has 35 members, which composes 27 Republicans and only 8 Democrats. And that's just sort of the overview of how the Alabama legislature is structured and what sort of unique challenges we have in Alabama, given that there are so few Democrats and most of the Republicans who run unopposed.
Yeah, and I was looking through this stuff, and maybe Robert, our historian on this, but if you look in 06, it was quite the opposite of what was going on. In 06, there was 23 Democratic senators and 12 Republicans. And again, in 06, there were 62 Democrats and 43 Republicans. So it wasn't very long ago that it was inversed, which I found very interesting. I thought it was much longer than that. But then again, I've only been really paying attention the last 4 years or so. So yeah, that's the makeup. And we're gonna bring up how the bill becomes law real quick. Back to it. I'm getting faster. And so basically what happens, and y'all cut me off if I get something wrong here. Bill is filed by a legislator, and that bill can be written by you or me or a lobbyist or the actual legislator themselves or whoever. So whoever writes the bill, it's got to go to the legislator next. That legislator then files that bill and it goes to their committee, a committee, not necessarily a committee that they're on or one they're in charge of. And as far as I can tell, all the committees are ran by Republicans. And
yes, every committee in the House and Senate, there are probably about a dozen or so standing committees, like Ways and Means. Here's all in the House. Here's all taxation questions. There's a corresponding financial committee in the Senate, I think. And then there are committees for other types of bills. And because of the Republican supermajority, the Republican leadership gets to pick those committee heads. And so the chair of every committee is a Republican.
Yep, exactly. And I think there's 21 Senate committees and 33 House committees. So that seems like too many committees to me. And then each of those committees, not each of them, but some of them got subcommittees on top of that. So next little part is the committees consider the bill. And there's 3 different things that'll happen. They'll either pass it through with favorable, I think is the term. Yeah, reported favorably. Or they won't pass it through, or it gets sent to a subcommittee. So those are the 3 outcomes. After it's filed, it goes to committee, and then either it's dead, it goes to a subcommittee, or it goes to where it gets what's called the second reading. And they don't literally, they're not, this is where it gets its first reading when it's filed, but they're not literally reading the thing, but that's what they say, a second reading. But it's here, though, at the committee level that you can request public hearings. And Allison, have you ever had to do that? Go through the clerk of a committee and request any public hearings on anything?
Yeah, definitely. So anytime an anti-trans or anti-queer bill gets filed in the state legislature, we will ask for a public hearing on it. They are usually pretty good about that, but I will note that they do not have to grant a public hearing. It's really more of a courtesy.
And another thing is they're supposed to also give equal time to opposition or in favor of the bills as well, as from what I understand.
Additionally,
Robert, have you ever? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Additionally, we have seen them before, like if there are 8 people there to testify in opposition to a bill and 3 people there to testify in favor of a bill, they'll give the 8 people 3 minutes apiece and they'll give the 3 people 5 minutes apiece. So sometimes they will kind of, skew it if they don't have enough, but it should kind of tell them something that they don't have very many people turning out in favor of certain bills.
For sure.
Have
you ever?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jason.
Have you had a positive experience with the public hearings, or what has the outcome of them been?
Some positive, some negative. Well, negative being this is also nuanced. I'm going to try not to get too into it, but we've done public hearings where we've arranged like a really solid lineup of speakers. Like for the past 2 years on the definition of sex bills, we have had a trained PhD biologist come and speak and, let them know that their definition of everything is not, in fact, in line with the science of biology. And the first year that we did that, it passed its committee, but it didn't get prioritized to get a House vote. And the second year we did that, they were a little more determined, and that time it almost made it all the way through. So yeah, it can vary. It's a good thing to do both from a narrative standpoint and from a just showing up and showing opposition to it. Helps deprioritize some of these things in the minds of the legislators, in my opinion.
Robert, have you ever had any experience with this?
Not particularly. I come from a representative district where it's just not helpful to talk to my local representative, and a lot of time I just don't have the money to be going down 2-3 hours trip to Montgomery. So there's a lot of times I'm kind of locked out of the system, because at best I would be looking at a uphill battle to do. I would be spending $20-$40 to go spend my gas to go down there, talk to my legislative member, and my legislative member goes, well, maybe we should bring the minimum wage down to $3. And I'm like, oh, this is not going well. I think it's getting worse. So a lot of times I'm just like, cool. I think I made things worse accidentally. Not even accidentally, just like I've had a conversation or two with my representative, and they've been something. But I can almost bet you money they don't even remember who I am. Anyway, yeah, no, it's just, and I'm not the only one that's had that same issue. There have been plenty of people that have been tried to get certain aspects through that, like, hey, this is affecting my local community. Is there a possibility we're able to get this looked at? And they're like, yeah, sure, you just got to spend the $40, $50 to get down here for this meeting that we're only going to have once, and we probably won't put on the books until the last day. So unless you're already looking for it, it becomes really difficult to stay in the loop.
Yeah, that sounds like a real crapshoot, doesn't it? I mean, first you got the money to get down there, and you might not even get to speak once you get down there. If, for instance, like Allison pointed out, there's inordinate amount of speakers, they might limit you or not even put you on. If so, yeah, that's a big barrier. And also the legislative sessions. And we'll kind of cover this in a little bit, but they're in certain time period, certain days, and working folks typically can't get off, and if they can't get off, they might just be, for lack of a better term, pissing in the wind, trying to get heard on the matters. But so yeah, it's in committee. It goes to the House, or it goes to the floor of the Senate or the House, and then or to a subcommittee, and then the next part, or it's stopped there. The next part is it's debated on the floor. Now, this was an interesting part. So, as these go through committee, there's two different schedules. There's the there's the regular schedule, and then there's also the special schedule. And apparently the special schedule takes more precedence. But this is all ran through the rules committees, either the Senate or the House rules committees. And they have their debates, and these take place after the legislative day, and they're closed door. But that's typically what we're seeing when we see the bills brought forward. We're seeing the special order calendar as opposed to the regular order calendar. Is that making sense? It's a little convoluted, but yeah, two different calendars as far as where the bills go through. And this is where the bill gets its third reading. And debate takes place. So once that happens, so now you have this bill. It's gone through, it's been filed, it's gone through committee, it's gone through debate, it's on the floor, and they vote on it. And in Alabama, just like most legislatures in this case, 51% majority, 50 plus one, and sometimes, as they say, it gets it through. And now it's gone through one body, one chamber, either the Senate or the House, and you repeat the process all over again. And so also during the debates and stuff, that's where amendments can take place, amendments brought to the floor, and all that good stuff. And also, during the committee's meeting times, amendments can take place as well, and change the bill and all that. So clear as mud.
I do have a quick note.
Okay.
Robert brought up some real good points a minute ago. As for the committee hearings, something that we encourage folks to do if they do have like the time and financial capacity to get down there, is to come out and just be in the room for it. Because a lot of the time, like, if we bring like a lot of folks to not only testify, but just be there in sight of the legislators as they're on committee, that can also kind of discourage them from, passing a bad bill. So that is worthwhile at least a little bit. I also wanted to note we're planning a legislative advocacy day for like the anti-queer bills, the 5th of February, so second day of session. And we are able to like get folks financial assistance, like if you need money for gas, or like if you otherwise wouldn't be able to take the day off work to come down there. So yeah, we are trying to finalize those details now, but that is something that's going to be available if folks are interested.
That's outstanding. That's some force multiplication right there. And I probably, y'all probably do this, but showing up all together, it's always good to, and I don't know how exactly. I can imagine you can't really maybe bring signs, but maybe coordinated dressing, like wearing, shirts in support of, or disapproval of, or color coordination, all that type stuff is probably some considering if you showing up in mass somewhere.
Yeah, definitely the color coordination bit. Oh, and my other point was going to be, because some of these legislators, do not want to listen, and it can go in one ear and out the other. But like, there is something to be said about like the number of people they get contacting them about something, because like, one of us talking to them one-on-one, like over email, say, may not have much of an impact. But if they're getting like continuous contact from a bunch of different people, especially like over the phone and in person, saying, vote no on this, vote no on this, that can have an impact. It can at least, discourage some of the ones who don't think it through quite as well, let's say, to vote on it.
So even if I can't make the schlep to Montgomery, it's still worthwhile for me to write or call my congressman. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll get into this a little more later, but we are kind of seeing, as time goes on, the phone calls might earn you a little more points there too. But both if you can.
Phone calls instead of letters?
Yeah, maybe prioritize phone calls, but both are good. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would add, with that talking to them, have a story ready. Storytelling has a powerful impact on folks. And if you got a story, maybe not specifically about yourself, but about the situation and somebody somebody you love, tell that story to that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the next part, this is where Meemaw comes in. Man, what an interesting lady. She's not going to be around there much longer. She's in her last term. Thank goodness we got term limits on our governors here. But this is where Meemaw comes in. So when it reaches her, she either signs it into law or vetoes it. And as Jason pointed out, that's where it can go back into the House and the Senate, and by simple majority, the veto can be overridden, which is an interesting thing there. Certainly make things a lot easier on that, but the way things are, it seems a lot of times she don't veto much that comes out of the legislature. It might remember. I know she vetoed something here last session, but I can't remember. Or maybe it wasn't last session. Maybe it was the session before that. But she don't seem to veto much.
Realistically, she can't veto much because they'll just say, hey, we understand, we'll send it back in a different package. They'll change two things, and then, yay, we'd prefer you don't veto this. It looks bad, but there's 30 of us that are going to vote for this, so we beat you by 34.
Yeah.
So in a lot of cases,
veto. And
Yeah,
it would be embarrassing for her to do it. So they count votes before she vetoes. She has pocket vetoed a few things in the past. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Robert.
no, that's actually the next thing I was going to bring up is pocket vetoes are much more effective than outright vetoes, especially because our legislative days are condensed, which is going to be a problem because the upcoming the upcoming legislative session, I forgot which legislature, someone put forth a bill to try to break it up. That way, if they want to, they're take time and extend out the session in two sets during the year, which would be bad for most people because in a lot of cases, the wackadoo things that they want to try to pass, they can't pass, like the flag ban bill. They can't pass it because they just run out of time. Them cutting it in half and extending it out would give them more time.
I think I heard something about the budget, changing the way the budget process is done, which would, and to back up real quick, a pocket veto, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where she basically don't sign nothing. She doesn't veto it officially, but she doesn't sign it.
That's correct. There's a deadline to sign it by, and she just doesn't sign it.
No. But yeah, I think I heard somewhere that they're trying to change the budgeting process, which could impact how the timing of bills and getting them, on the floor, not on the floor, get a vote on them and stuff. So real quick, some way before bill is introduced, research the issues in your legislatures, connect with local special interest groups. So this is where we do coalition building, y'all, because usually on all these matters out there, there's some folks that are already working on stuff. And we're going to talk about a bill real quick, HB 67 here in a second. And encourage your legislature to introduce bills on issues that you care about and tell why legislators need to act by sharing information in person, online, and in the news. So, keep yelling. And, I don't know if this was named after you, Allison, but we got the Allison database.
Definitely not. I think it might be Alabama Legislative Information System Online.
Oh, goodness. Wow. I think you nailed it.
You rattled that right off. Yeah. Way to go.
Because I was wondering what the hell it meant, and I did not look it up. I was like, well, Allison ain't that pretty. All right. When a bill is in committee, contact the committee members to ask, support, reject, or amend. Recruit your friends to contact them as well. These are actions to take, folks. We got to remember to do these and recruit others to do these actions. And we kind of hit on this already. Attend the public hearings, coordinate, yeah. When it's on the floor, contact your legislator again. Ask your friends to do the same. Tell people why you think the bill should or should not pass by posting on social media, writing op-eds in newspapers. All manners of communication. It used to be in this country that you could get the death penalty for communicating about unions. So use your voice, folks. And when the bill is on the governor's desk, contact the governor to encourage signing or vetoing. Identify other people who have special influence with the governor, contact them. And something I would say, we were talking about this, a lot of these legislators, a lot of them have businesses. I'm going to suggest calling their place of business taking up some of their day while they're at work, trying to work on firing people or whatever they do over there.
The same
yeah.
can be said. The same can be said that most of their political action committee dollars that they get from their campaigns are easily accessible. So if you have, let's say, hey, this person is trying to increase caps on heating, or not increase, decrease caps on heating stimulus. I would see if the person in question has had donations from Alabama Power in the last 3 cycles to see if I can get some information saying, hey, this is a person that is interested in particularly cutting supplies for those in need to make sure that their homes are heated. I want to get your opinion on this as a power company because you are a dedicated supporter to them for the last 12 years. Always good to know where the money is.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That gets into things doing, candidate research and all that. Which, anybody out there that's wanting to do research on these folks and how it all ties in together, hit us up. We'd be happy to have the help. Yeah.
I mentioned this a little bit last time, but I really don't want people to sleep on contacting your legislators. And I know that most of them are MAGA chuds, and like my representative is the sponsor of HB 67. So I'm gonna call him and ask him to vote against the bill he sponsored. But Altrac really has opened my eyes to the value of contacting them anyway. And they had a number of successes last year when it came to blocking or at least delaying anti-queer and anti-trans bills. And they really are one of my heroes in the state of Alabama. So I brag on Altrac to everybody I meet, and I say often, like, yeah, contact your legislators, because even if you don't change their mind, you can get them to deprioritize things. They may not be as committed to it as they think, and a lot of times they're trying to throw red meat out to the base and not expecting any pushback. And if they get that pushback, it may give them pause.
Do we know where these legislators live? I'm just kidding. So yeah, the next little part we would like to talk about is this bill, HB 67, and it's been filed officially. And Allison, can you tell us a little more what's going on with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it violates the single subject rule of the Alabama code. So I'm going to go down this one by one. The first subject of it is ostensibly a drag ban, but it may punish trans people for being present at schools or libraries because they define drag as a performance in which a performer exhibits a sex identity that is different from the sex assigned to the performer at birth, which is totally normal language to put in your bill. So, like, take me, for example. I was observed to be male at birth, but, it turns out I'm not a man, and I transitioned. So, I mean, I'm a woman, and I wear feminine clothes. So
Very well, by the way. You dress very nicely. I'd like to add.
Thanks. I like to get a bit of the femme style and the dyke zone in there. So basically, like, trans folks like myself and anyone who doesn't dress to conform with the gender the state thinks they are potentially within the scope of this law. And like, I know transgender parents in this state who have kids at public schools, and like, would they not be able to pick their kids up from school? Would they not be able to attend like their child's school play or sporting event or whatever? And like, folks might get hung up on the word performance here, but when the state wants to punish somebody who they don't think should be in public, it doesn't really matter to what extent they are, quote unquote, performing. We're kind of just being real cautious and looking at how our the court's going to interpret this in the worst possible case. And also, depending on how performance is interpreted, like a transgender employee performing their job duties at an Alabama library or public school could find themselves in violation of the law just because they're transgender or not wearing the clothes the state wants them to wear, which would be a violation of Bostock versus Clayton County. And like, even if you can overlook the obvious First Amendment violation of this, it really begs the question, what is the Alabama state mandated dress code and why should we have one? So it also catches up cisgender folks or like folks who aren't trans in that. So like if a girl dresses up as George Washington for a classroom presentation, like she would be in violation of this law. School plays would need to be strictly gendered to avoid violating this law. What else? Yeah.
Would it get Scots wearing kilts too, or
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
non-binary folks wearing, whatever?
yeah, definitely.
I do find it funny how they have parental rights as the very first parental rights, comma.
Yes. So that's a little bit of neat little bit of trickery in there. I believe that is to give them an excuse to violate the single subject rule, because it's like, oh, well, it's a parent's right to not let their children around drag performances, and it's a parent's right to not let their children, go to the sleepaway camp where there are trans kids. But it's two different things, even if you want to paint it under that umbrella.
Could you go into a little bit of that single subject matter?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, but like a bill can only be about one thing. And so, this is their excuse to go, oh, well, it is about one thing. It's about parental rights. But very clearly two different, like it covers like different locations, different subjects. Part of it is about drag performances. Part of it is about sleepaway camps. It just doesn't make sense to put them together into one bill. And like, honestly, like students and teachers should be free to go about their curriculum as normal without being afraid if they're in violation of the law. And like, it would also give license to anyone who wants to complain about another person's appearance. It would give them a legal standing to use the state to punish people for not conforming to their standard of dress. So like the Moms for Liberty types would love to be able to do this. Like the kind of world that they want is one where they see a queer person or a trans person and they can just go, hey, you are not what I think you should be. See you in court. So the second subject is where it effectively bars children who are transgender from sleepaway camps, at least ones that are like funded in part by the state. And so this is just a complete copy paste of the Space Camp Amendment, which was tacked onto our What is a Woman Act, known in other parts of the country where it's been introduced as like a definition of sex bill. And this Space Camp Amendment was overwhelmingly rejected in committee by Stat Higgins' fellow Republicans when he brought it forward as that amendment to that bill that has failed for the past 2 years. And like, I don't want to get too deep into it, but there was a situation online where someone was made aware that there was a transgender employee at Space Camp. And the guy made a Facebook post about it, and he was like, this thing works here, and he was using all kind of bigoted language. And importantly, he didn't make any kind of accusation. He didn't even say he heard about an accusation. He was just saying there's a queer at space camp who is like working near children, and the right wing just went off on it. It got picked up by Libs of TikTok. This employee got death threats, and eventually the Space and Rocket Center they at first tried to move this employee to another department and then just ended up firing them. But yeah, so that's why we call it the Space Camp Amendment, because immediately following that, there are some folks who think that it may have been like entirely a political play, and not just like a concerned parent, because he had like a lot of information that like folks would really have to dig for. But shortly after that, this quote unquote Space Camp Amendment about the sleepaway camps was brought to the What is a Woman Act. So sorry to ramble about that, but it's not even about like employees at space camp or at sleepaway camps. It says no minor shall share a multi-occupancy bathroom changing facility sleeping quarter with members of the opposite sex. And strangely, unless the individuals are members of the same family, such as parent, legal guardian, sibling, or grandparent, and the minor has received approval from the parent or legal guardian to do so. So that's kind of interesting. But basically, it keeps out of these places.
It makes me wonder, like, what do they think these astronauts' fucking bathrooms look like?
Yeah.
Like, real talk, right? Like,
yeah.
Pretty sure it's pretty close quarters up there, and
yeah.
But we dropped in the chat numbers to call of all the sponsors of that bill, and we hope y'all take a moment to be able to do just that.
I have a note about that too. Let's see. We at Altrac are developing a call and email campaign for that that we'll hopefully have live before too long, definitely before session begins. And if you haven't heard of our org before, if you sign up for our email updates, we keep them very sparse because we are pleased to be the anti-queer legislation notification system for the state of Alabama, basically. But we track these bills, and then as they get filed and as they advance through the legislature, we analyze them, we make talking points on them, and we make it as easy as possible for you to contact your legislators about it. So like our email updates, like we'll tell you when a bill advances in the legislature, like at every step of that process that Austin was going over. And we also like coordinate testimony. We put out press releases about these as they move through the legislature. We try and kind of cover it all and keep folks informed. So you can sign up on our website for those updates, which is Altrac, ALTRAC .works. Instead of .com or .org, it's .works. WORKS.
Your shit does work for real.
Strongly recommend that. Yeah, like I said, at Altrac are some of my heroes in the state. I really have been impressed by the work they've done. And I brag on them to everybody.
Thanks. Yeah, glad to be doing it. I hope it's making a difference, and hope that we can keep the trans and queer folks in Alabama. I hope that we can keep living here in peace and coexisting with folks, because like, I don't know, I'm from here. I plan on staying here. I didn't choose to be trans. I don't see why we can't just get along.
That's right. Well, and I'll add that I saw a poll, something like 54% of Republicans or conservatives actually really are tired of the whole attack on trans folks. So, you know, there's some live and let live out there among conservatives. Looking at this little bill real quick, though, and now correct me if I'm wrong. Sex, the state of being male or female as observed or clinically verified at birth. I swear that that there's something along the lines of 5 or 6 different sexes, technically, if I recall, from a biological standpoint, because folks can be XXY, and which are technically different sexes. Has anybody ever seen something like that?
Yeah, just from a biological standpoint, like sex is kind of a loaded term just because like it encompasses so many different things. Like we have sex chromosomes, we have sex hormones, we have like sexual genitalia, and that's not even the half of it. And so, it seems like they mean, from the doctor who was present for delivery or whoever, looking at the outside of the baby and going, oh, it's this or that. It's not always this or that, but the folks who write this kind of legislation would like to pretend that it does work that way for everybody, and that it's just neat and simple for everybody.
Yeah, most of the people that write these bills are business owners or lawyers. Very few are mothers. Very few are biologists. Very few are nurses. I think there's literally only maybe 2, and I'm thinking might not even be 2 that have medical field knowledge. But also for those who may be interested in getting involved in other activities, this would be a good thing that if your city has a local pride a local pride scene, that you can do telethons, specifically getting together, watching something, and then after watching something, getting on phone calls to call these representatives.
Yeah, definitely. I forget if this bill is, just to add on to that, I forget if this is one of those bills, but a lot of the anti-queer legislation that we've seen, especially like our What is a Woman Act that Representative DuBose keeps trying to file, those are written by like out-of-state organizations.
I was about to say model bills, right?
Yeah.
Where they copy and paste a lot of this.
Right. I forget if this is one of those too, but yeah, certainly not written, by people who know advanced biology or by people who have the people's best interest at heart. Because to really underscore it, this, and I'm sure the audience of this podcast is well aware, but it's good to keep saying that. We're seeing these kind of culture war bills because they want to divide us apart and keep the working class down.
Yeah,
I don't feel like that to every audience, but y'all know.
Yeah, I'm often reminded of that poem by that Catholic priest out in Germany. But I think that poem, they skip a line in it. I think the first line should have been, first they came for the queers, because his Catholic ass, from what I understand, was homophobic, and this is how they start. They start a little bit at a time.
First they came for the queers, and I was kind of okay with that part until they came for the. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah. So kind of getting close to wrapping up here, but I'd like I'd like to maybe hear from Robert about a little bit how what goes on as far as caucuses, because like technically they're not party. It's not the party. It's a caucus, right? And we got the majority caucus and the majority leader and the minority leader and all these little positions. I believe, is it Anthony Daniels is the House Minority Caucus leader?
Oh, to my recollection, that's correct.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that is correct. But essentially, it breaks down to the structure. Everything has some sort of structure normally. So in this particular situation, the state legislature's structure is based on whoever's in the majority, and then whoever's in the majority builds their own structure on who gets the political appointments and favors, essentially. The first one being voting on who is your leadership for that set of 4 years, unless something happens and someone leaves early. So there's normally the party leadership for the body of legislation you're in, whether it be the House or the Senate. Then you have your second in command. Then your third in command is the person they call the whip. They're the person that actually goes and makes sure that you got enough votes to do whatever you say you're going to go do. And those are normally your main three. In most cases, because the structure holds, because most of the time no one has enough individual clout to try and pass anything by themselves. So, for example, like if you do not play ball, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to get anything passed. A great example being that What is a Woman bill. Part of the reason why it failed, it did not have buy-in from the caucus as a whole. It was originally just one person's idea. And even after the fact, one of the things that's been happening in the last few months is the both going around and trying to get buy-in from the members of their party, which, technically you're supposed to do, but like a lot of individualistic people are in it for themselves. We'll put it as in it for themselves. So sometimes they just don't or are not willing to work with each other. But for the most part, they stay in that structure because under that structure, they're protected. Same way, for example, we talked about earlier where you see people go and say, hey, I'm just going to put my name on this bill and push it through because there's a structure for that. Both national and local, there's a structure essentially that, hey, we're going to craft it. You just got to push it. If I remember correctly, for the legislature nationwide is normally ALEC, which is a business/politician alliance where they write the bills and then they just submit the bills wholesale, not knowing half the time what's in the bills. If I remember correctly, it's ALEC for legislature. It's the what is it called? Federalist Society for judicial and lawyers, and then it's Heritage Foundation for executive. These are structures made specifically to push agendas and give people something to work on in case they believe that someone doesn't have anything to work on. They just got elected for popularity in their local district. It gives them something to actually do.
What fun. And there's actually you just mentioned the Federalist Society, but in Alabama, I think it's the Alabama Policy Institute, and this is probably something we'll get into in another episode. But they're a lot of these, other than doing the copy paste model bill type thing, we get bills from them, don't we?
Yes and no. Officially, no. Most of the time they'll sign on with like, hey, we agree with this. But yeah, sometimes it is just straight splotches of it are found in certain bills. The same thing can be said for there's a whole web of infrastructure around this, because at the end of the day, you don't have forever. You try to take what power you have, maximize it, and then if whatever fails, you blame it on the other side. The same can be said for the Eagle Forum, which has been around for a very long time, and that goes back into the, I'll say, grassroots, although I use big quotation for grassroots around the specifics of what's going on in a local sense. A lot of the Eagle Forum is what informed Moms for Liberty in these local races, and specifically our school board races in Alabama.
Tell me, does the Democratic Party have a version of the Alabama Policy Institute, or where does a lot of their legislation come from?
I do not know. I will be honest with you. I don't think they have their own version. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong, because normally there's structure for everything and everyone. But I can't tell you off the top of my head. And, shame on me. I should know that, but they don't get to pass many things. So it makes it not a priority sometimes.
There are liberal think tanks at the federal level, but as far as a liberal think or a left-leaning think tank in Alabama that corresponds to the Alabama Progressive Institute, I doubt it very highly. Or the Alabama Policy, whatever they're called. I'm sorry, not Progressive Institute. The Alabama Policy Institute.
Also, that's not by chance. Some of that is the conservative lean has more organizational structure. One feeds into the other. The part of the reason why Alabama was at one point ran by Democrats. Now, let's be honest, conservative Democrats that are tied to the party branding rather than the actual policy, was simply because there was institutional background. When you lost that institutional background, whether it be because of NAFTA, whether it be because of inflation or other issues that popped up afterwards, it made it harder for people to support or back it up. There was a hollowness around it that was built just into the name, honestly. So when Republicans took control, they took control permanently, because they restructured all the districts. They restructured all the districts, and then after restructuring all the districts, they went into certain districts that had way too many members of the community that may have been minorities, and then stopped them from being able to get driver's ID and voter ID, making it more difficult for them to vote. And then once they had the low voter turnout locked in, that was the game. Because sure, if Alabama reaches 40, 50%, there's 4 or 5 seats that flip automatically. But hey, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm using myself as an example. Doing this a long time, you go talk to someone, they say, well, it's been a decade since I've seen a Democrat in this area. I haven't even liked a Democrat in this area in 20, 30 years, because once the steel mill job moved away, they didn't have nothing to offer me. So I'm just going to go with the party that says we're going to swing and be angry, because I'm angry. They're the ones that seem to hear me.
Certainly, anger is an addiction too. That's one thing you got to watch out for is, emotions are powerful things, and being angry about your predicament in life, some of it within your power and some of it not within your power, but then people manipulating you and manipulating your emotional state to override your logic and getting that lizard brain. People get stuck there. They get stuck in anger. They get stuck in hate. They get stuck in fear, uncertainty. And, you know, they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to feel like that. And they and we all deserve better. I wanted to read something real quick. I think there's a book out there, might be called Third Reconstruction. But I really think we need a third Reconstruction, y'all. And I'm going to read about the first Reconstruction real quick, and then trying to get some final thoughts from everybody. But Reconstruction. Following the Confederacy's defeat in 1865, the state government underwent a transformation. Upon the state's readmission into the United States in 1868, I don't think they were readmitted, they never left. Radical Republicans, including white Northerners known as carpetbaggers, scallywags, Southern Republicans, and freedmen, African Americans, dominated both the state governorship and the General Assembly. For the first time, blacks could vote and were elected to the legislature, a feat that would not be repeated for another 100 years. The resulting 1868 Constitution reflected the radicals' period in the state government. Yet, as in other states during Reconstruction, former Confederate and reactionary conservative forces from the Democratic Party gradually overturned the radicals. By the 1876 state general elections, the General Assembly was once again a body dominated by bourbon Democrats. Both the resulting 1875 and 1901 constitutions disenfranchised blacks and dismembered the radical Republicans, creating and enforcing Jim Crow laws. It was also in the 1901 Constitution that the General Assembly changed its name to the Alabama Legislature. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there and get any thoughts. Mars, you've been pretty quiet this whole time. You learn anything today?
Yeah, I learned some. I was just letting y'all talk. Y'all know a lot more about this. I did want to say earlier, Robert was talking about going after who funds the different politicians like Alabama Power and various other groups. Is Open Secrets the best place to go, or where would you go?
Good question.
Open Secrets is normally best federal, but some of that you can find just on the Secretary of State's office under the campaign donations.
Okay. Also, I don't know of any like liberal institutions that are involved with the Democratic Party, but I do know there are some that are trying to be involved, like the Progressive Policy Institute. Y'all were talking about that earlier.
Right on. Yeah, that's a good question about where that money is, and I appreciate the info on the Policy Institute. Called it the Progressive Policy Institute.
Yeah, they're. I don't think they're like super involved with the Alabama Democratic Party, but I know they're trying to be. They're trying to run somebody in Huntsville, I think, for city council.
Okay. And we're trying to run folks too. So if you're interested in running, hit us up by that email address or find us on, we got a TikTok. Mars, what's our TikTok?
It's NADSA.
That's pronounced NADSA, y'all. North Alabama Democratic Socialists of America. Jason, you got any final thoughts?
No, other than just the action item, find out who your local legislatures are and call them about HB 67 and ask them to oppose it. So it probably makes more sense for you to call your legislator instead of like everybody calling Scott Stodhagen. I will call Scott Stodhagen because he is my legislator. So I encourage everybody to find out who their state rep and their state senator is, and call up and ask them to vote no on HB 67. Even if they're one of the sponsors, it can't hurt to call them.
Yeah, and dropping in the chat, quite a few things, but this last little thing is there's a lot of bills already pre-filed, y'all. I didn't count them, but there's 2 pages worth, and there's probably something on the order of getting close to 100, if not over that already. So, do some research yourself, and anything that brings, gets your spidey sense going, share that information for sure. Robert, you got any final thoughts on anything? Anything you'd like to plug? I know you've been working hard on trying to get the Pride movement spread to other cities. You got any info on anything for us?
Not currently. As of a few months ago, I actually have been trying to help new leadership in and around Pride. And when I get more information about it in February, I will let y'all know. But for now, it's where it is. I will say Mac Butler is one of the sponsors of this bill. So if you live in the Gadsden, Alabama, Atala, Alabama, and I think that would be part of Glencoe, Alabama, that area, that is your representative, and that's the person you can talk to specifically about that bill. I will also say, since this is a conversation about the state legislature, this has been a long-running issue for a very long time. It's been built since 1901 specifically to make it get involved. I mean, the state legislature had sued because originally they were not redistricting, because redistricting back in 1920 would have given them 2 or 3 African-American representatives. They were forced 70 years later. They were supposed to redistrict 7 times before they finally were forced to do it. Same reason why there are other issues, like one of the main reasons why it takes a 1-vote majority to overrule is there potentially could have been a future where there was a Democratic governor or a governor that is a person of color, and the legislature, being the people who are able to rewrite their own districts and pick their own voters, wanted to make sure that that was never a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that is about it.
Thank you for that.
I will also mention, one more thing. I will also mention the Reconstruction issue partially was never finished because Rutherford B. Hayes, one of the worst presidents of the United States, which is pretty high to be considered one of the worst presidents of the United States, famously was known specifically for that. When his election came up, he needed votes and votes in the South, and a part of that deal was he became president. In return, he stopped Reconstruction.
Yeah, Reconstruction was sabotaged. Absolutely. All right. Thank you for that. Allison, you got any thing you'd like to plug? Anything going on? Any final words?
Yeah, definitely. To add to what Jason was saying, definitely contact your legislators about HB 67. And also, they are going to forget in the next 2 months that it'll take for the legislative session to get started. Starts in February. So contacting them again is important, like as the bills are coming up for a vote for them. So if you want to be notified of when the bill is actually like going to get a vote in committee, when it's going to get a vote on the floor, and for you to get contact info for the folks in those committees, be sure to sign up for email updates through Altrac. Again, that is the website is altrac.works, altrac.works. But yeah, very, very much appreciate y'all having me on to ramble about this. And everybody out there who's listening, you know, especially if there are trans folks out there listening, we're going to get through it. We're going to keep finding ways. And especially, you know, even if everything passes, we're always going to find ways to support each other. So yeah, make sure you're staying plugged in with your local community too, and friends and family and such. Yeah,
That's right. Be a good ally. It's our duty to fight. It's our duty to win. You know, all the power to all the people, and we break our chains together, folks. So I'd like to say solidarity forever.
hell yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, Allison. Solidarity forever.
Solidarity forever. Thanks for having me.
Thank y'all. We'll see y'all soon. This has been Cornbread and Roses. Take care, y'all.